Wow, wow, wow. Kevin McCarthy has failed now 6 times to become the Speaker of the House. You love to see it. He's waited, as I said yesterday, a decade for this opportunity to come up again, and he's blowing it. Because he's a petulant child who refuses to recognize just how unpopular he and everyone who likes him is in this country, and how there are still some members of Congress who feel like they have to placate the masses to a certain extent. They look at how unpopular McCarthy and his ilk are, and they say, you know what, we can't just sign on to be a part of you, because your ick will rub off on us, and we ran against that sort of thing. So we're going to put the kibosh on your speakership, since you need us. The Republicans only have a 5-seat majority. There are now 20 Republicans who consistently are voting against McCarthy and voting for a third candidate, now Mr. Byron Donalds of Naples, Florida, I believe. And it doesn't matter who they're voting for, because the alternate candidate, is, in this case, they're only gotten 20 votes. They're not going to become the speaker either. If McCarthy isn't able to become speaker with over 200 votes, Donalds isn't going to become speaker with 20 votes. But what their votes signify is, it's a vote of contempt for this Congress, for this Republican Party, for the boys up in D.C. Matt Gaetz has said that Kevin McCarthy is so indignant over this whole matter. He has moved his belongings into the Speaker's office, even though he has not been elected Speaker of the House. He has moved out of his existing office into the Speaker's office and is just, pouting, essentially. There was a man who also illegally occupied the Speaker's office when he was not the Speaker of the House. It was on January the 26th, 2021. And I think most of us remember what happened to him. He got arrested, thrown in prison, and I think they lost the key. I don't think that guy's ever getting out. Yet Kevin McCarthy is so entitled that he just waltzes right in there, moves on in, puts his stuff in there. This man is a tone-deaf buffoon. He's the furthest thing from a leader. I think even he recognizes that. At least I would hope. But even with all that said, he could have the Speaker's gavel if he really wanted it, if he would just give in to political reality. It's not that all these guys are just to have a personal vendetta against Kevin McCarthy, although that's certainly becoming more and more the case. But not going into this. Their problem with him was not personal. He could have easily given them what they wanted, because he is not a political person. It's not like Kevin McCarthy is some, ideological, regime conformist who just, hates all dissidents. That's, even though in practice that's how he operates, he doesn't care deep down. He could have given these people some of what they wanted, and then he would have had the Speaker's gavel, and they would have all, patted him on the back and loved him. And he would have, in his position, being the kind of person he is, he cares about status, he cares about power, nothing else. If he was intelligent, if he was good at the whole Machiavellian politician thing, he would have done what he needed to do to win these people over, not try and beat them down. The more you try and beat down people who disagree with you and say, no dissent, and you smack them in the head, and you smack them in the head, guess what? What was it that Ben Kenobi said? You strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you could ever imagine. The cheesy little sci-fi line, it's a pretty basic idea, and it's one which resonates throughout history. And guess what? It's just as true today as when George Lucas first tweeted it. Kevin McCarthy is emblematic of everything that is wrong with America. There is a certain contingent of the U.S. House of Representatives that understands this, and for that reason, they can't look their voters in the eye and cast their vote for him to be Speaker of the House, because they don't want to be exposed as lying fools the way that AOC was after she backed down from forced to vote. Jimmy Dore was right about forced to vote. people hadn't already figured that out, and it's been obvious for a long time, it should be obvious now. Because you know what the House Republicans are doing right now? I mean, what the Freedom Caucus and their ilk are doing? They're forcing the vote. That's what they're doing. They're saying, you know what? We have a slim majority. We're not going to vote for you to be Speaker unless you give us what we want. And the regime apologists of the world, like Ryan Grimm back then, said, oh my gosh, Kevin McCarthy will become Speaker if you don't vote for Nancy Pelosi. And so that was the lie that the likes of AOC, and I think, Ilhan Omar and the others, Rashida Tlaib and Cori Bush, I think all of them were in there, that, the squad. I don't know if Cori Bush is officially considered part of the squad, but that was what they said. It wasn't true. That is, unless the House rules were changed to elect a Speaker by plurality rather than by absolute majority. That's the way the rules are written right now. And Mike McCall, a most contemptible human being, I believe he's chair of the House Armed Services Committee, a real dirtbag. He is a little John McCain Jr. He's never seen a war that he didn't like. He's never seen the blood of a child on a battlefield that didn't make him salivate. He's a bloodthirsty satanic priest of the Church of the Military-Industrial Complex. And so he has every incentive to try and get Kevin McCarthy elected Speaker. And so he has brought forth the idea that the House Republicans could invoke the nuclear option. And what is the nuclear option in this case? Now, when I hear Mike McCall say nuclear option, that makes me very nervous, because he may very well be talking about actual nukes. Let's just nuke the Freedom Caucus. Honestly, the military-industrial complex has done crazier things. But thankfully, that's not quite what he means. By the nuclear option, he's saying change the rules so that you can elect a Speaker by simple plurality rather than absolute majority. What that means is that you have a vote, you can have 5 different people on the ballot, let's say, and nobody gets 50% or more, but whoever has the most votes wins. That's the way most of our elections here are conducted in the United States, but in the House for the Speaker election, they do it by absolute majority. You have to have 50% plus 1. Well, if you have a plurality vote, and we have another vote like, the last few rounds, to where Kevin McCarthy gets, over 200 votes, and then Byron Donalds or somebody else gets like 20 votes, and then the Democrat, gets the rest of the votes, well, then you'd have a Democrat Speaker, which would be pretty damn funny. And it would be all the Republican establishment's fault. Now, they would blame the Freedom Caucus for, not voting for them, but, you're putting a gun to their head. And you know what? If they don't blink, if they still say no and they stand by their convictions, that's your fault. Because you put a gun to somebody's head. You didn't really want to pull the trigger, but you put a gun to their head, and they called your bluff. If that happens, they're going to try and blame the victim. They're going to try and blame the guy who's got his brain splattered against the wall. Now, something interesting is I believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the 5th vote, which I witnessed today, not the 6th. There was a 6th vote that I didn't catch, although the tally, I believe, was the same. In the 5th vote, I believe I heard Thomas Massie vote for McCarthy. Now, Thomas Massie would be the last guy you would expect to buckle. I don't think he's a sellout. Marjorie Taylor Greene, back in December, she was like, oh, yeah, we love Kevin McCarthy. He's a conservative legend. Total bullshit. I mean, she couldn't even say, she was saying it with a straight face, but, like, she was dead inside, you could tell. The woman is thoroughly corrupted at this point. Thomas Massie, not so much. He's not going to break. The guy's got a strong brain. He's got a strong will. He knows what he's doing. He's a Ron Paul guy. Yet he, I believe, cast his vote for McCarthy. And that, to me, would seem to signal that what Jack Posobiec tweeted this morning at like 5 a.m. was true, and that was that Tucker Carlson's terms that he laid out last night to Kevin McCarthy were acceptable. And one of those terms was give Thomas Massie control over a church committee 2.0 to expose and investigate the deep state and their meddling in domestic politics. even if that's all that comes out of this, and Kevin McCarthy becomes Speaker and things are terrible, but we get Church Committee 2.0 led by Thomas Massey, I mean, I would call that a win. That's pretty darn good. With that said, though, I do want all of the other demands to be met. 4 out of 9 members of the Rules Committee being, Freedom Caucus guys, that would be great. What were some of the other demands? Oh, I think Matt Gaetz wants to be chair of the Armed Services Committee, take Mike McCall's job. That's not going to happen, but that would be fantastic. I would love to see, because Matt has become a very, I don't know how very it is, but certainly by congressional standards, he's become a big hawk against the military-industrial complex. And he was even, accusing McCarthy of promising to start new wars if he's elected Speaker, which, I mean, is just hilarious and great to see a Republican saying, hey, you don't want this guy because he's going to start new wars. Because a few years ago, a Republican saying that he's going to start new wars, that would be something you would want to brag about. That would be something that you'd be saying, like, as a compliment about him. Oh, look, he wants to start new wars. He's tough. So I would love to see that. I think that Gaetz has been great through all this. He's been consistently anti-McCarthy and hard line on this. Now, at the end of the day, there's probably going to be some kind of compromise. I would think. It's not like you're going to have the Freedom Caucus running the House. It's not going to be that. You're not going to have a Freedom Caucus guy as Speaker. But if McCarthy or anyone else on the evil side of the Republican Party wants to be Speaker at all, they're going to have to do something to get the Freedom Caucus guys over. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.